Hey, and welcome to Stu Man Rides. We're going to start a new series of videos. We're going to talk about some riding techniques, and we're going to start with how to select a line for a pretty simple corner. So we're here at Chuckwalla Valley Raceway. And we're going to talk about turn 3. So right now I'm standing in turn 2. It's at the end of the front straightaway. There's kind of a little kink before it. It's a pretty complex corner actually. Two corners kind of linked together. So it's a bit unusual. So we're going to start this series talking about something that's a little bit simpler, and that's going to be turn 3.
So I thought I'd give you an overhead view of turn 3. This is the corner that we're going to be talking about. And as you can see, it's actually less than 90 degrees. Sometimes when you're riding the track, corners might appear slightly different from what they actually are. And this gives you a good idea of how the corner is actually shaped. When you're riding this track, this corner would appear to be 90 degrees. But in reality, it's actually a little less than that.
Turn 3 has a pretty good little straightaway that leads into it, and then a pretty long straightaway after it. So it's a fairly straightforward corner. It's, like I said, a little less than 90 degrees. Doesn't have any camber. There's no hills or crests or anything like that. No big bumps. So it's about as classic a corner and as simple as a corner as you can get. So as you exit turn 2 and you get a little straight, you want to start thinking about setting yourself up for turn 3. So we're going to talk about how to actually choose a line through this simple corner that we call turn 3 here at Chuckwalla Valley Raceway. So we'll give you a look at that. So right now we're on the approach to turn 3. So those cones that you see on the left hand side are actually set there to give people something to drive towards when they come out of turn 2. So you want to actually set your bike up on the left-hand side of the track here. Get as close to this curbing as you can. Use all of the racetrack. And the first thing that you want to look for is something that you can use as a reference point to tell you where you want to turn in for this corner. It's important to choose a reference point for where you want to turn in order to prevent you from turning in a little bit too early. So most riders, when they first start riding on a racetrack, certainly have a tendency to want to turn the bike in a little bit too early, because as you approach this corner, out in front of you, you basically see a whole lot of desert, and you don't really want to ride your nice shiny new sport bike off into the dirt. So the sooner you can get close to that inside curbing, the better you're going to feel. So most riders, as they approach this corner, they want to start turning the bike in to get closer to that curbing, give themselves a nice buffer between themselves and the pavement. What happens when you do that, though, is if you turn in early, you run wide coming off of the corner, and that's probably the most common mistake that most people make. So choosing a good reference point that'll help you draw you further into the corner and force you to stay out wider longer will allow you to get a nice tight exit coming off the corner and get a good drive as well.
So the direction to travel here is from the bottom of the screen towards the top of the screen, and from the left to the right. So here's our overhead view of turn 3 again, and what I've done is drawn a couple different lines on here. So you can see we have a red line and we have a green line. So the red line represents a rider that's turned in too early. You can see for each of these lines we have some points associated with them. You can see the colored circles next to the lines. So we have a red dot right where the rider turned in. The next red dot that you see is where the rider apexed, and then the third red dot is where the rider ended up. So on the green line, we have a green dot where they turn in, a green dot where they apex, and a green dot where they ended up. So you can see what happens when you turn in too early. You hit an earlier apex, and then you run wide a whole lot sooner. So the rider on the red line is hitting the edge of the racetrack right pretty much where the curbing begins, and they're carrying a lot of lean angle. You can see later in that line the radius actually tightens up. So the red line is real open, real straight until it gets to the apex, and then after the apex the radius actually tightens up. Where you can see on the green line, the line is fairly open in the beginning. It's probably a little bit tighter in the beginning of the corner, but then from the apex to the exit it's almost straight. So the rider on the red line is not going to be able to accelerate once they come back past the apex, because the line actually tightens up past the apex. Rider on the green line, once they hit that apex, they're going to be able to roll on the throttle pretty hard and drive off that corner. So this is just an illustration of the difference in your line when you turn in early and apex early versus turning in a little bit later and apexing a little bit later.
I want to look for some reference points, preferably on the pavement, things that we can use to help us determine where we want to turn in. So you can see there's some cracks here that run perpendicular to the pavement. Those make good reference points for where to turn in. If you know that, okay, so I want to be close to that crack and very close to the curbing on the left-hand side, then that will help you locate yourself. If you use a skid mark, like the one we see right in front of us, there's a couple there that you can use. There's some spots on the track. There's the curbing, and the end of the curbing there is actually a pretty good reference point for this corner. I don't think you'd want to go all the way to the end of the curbing before you turn in, but you can use the end of the curbing and say, well, I want to turn in maybe 30 feet before the curbing ends or something like that. So if there's no reference point in the exact area where you think it's a good place to turn in, then you can choose one in the general vicinity and say, okay, I want to go 3 feet past the crack, or I'm going to turn in 20 feet before the end of the curbing, or use the dog that's standing on the racetrack. Anything. Hopefully, preferably not the dog, because they probably won't be here when the track session starts. Next thing you want to do is choose an apex. So here at Chuckwalla, they make that pretty easy for you. They put these cones out that help you find a good apex for this corner. So as we come in and we pretend, let's say we were going to turn in somewhere in this neighborhood and start arcing down towards the inside edge of the track. So we're going to be looking for that cone off in the distance that's going to tell us where we want to apex. So the idea is we don't really want to get to that curbing until we get to the cone. So we want to kind of stay out a little ways away and gradually work our way towards that cone as we approach it. If you get down to that curbing too soon, it's basically the same thing as turning in too early. If you get to the curbing too soon, you're going to run wide, probably coming off of the corner. So as we approach this cone, we're going to try and spot it as soon as we can, get our eyes on it. Look at the pavement that you want to hit next to the cone, right? It's better to actually look at the pavement rather than looking directly at the cone. If you look at the cone, you may get a little bit too close to the curb, have to stand the bike up, and that's a mistake that's pretty common as well. So how do you know if that cone's in the right spot or if it's a good apex? Well, there's a few rules that you can use, and they help you determine whether you have a good turn-in point and whether you have a good apex. So to get a good line through a corner, there's a couple things that are pretty constant, right? So number one, the old rule is you're trying to straighten out the corner as best you can. So if you feel like you truly made the largest radius possible out of that corner and you really made the straightest line possible through the corner, then you probably have a pretty good turn point and a pretty good apex.
So let's take a look at our lines again and compare the radius of the two. So you can see that green line is about as straight as you can make this corner, right? It's a little tighter in the beginning, but really not much. It's a pretty gentle arc even in the beginning. And then once you come past the apex, it's virtually a straight line to the edge of the track. The red line, however, starts off pretty good. It's pretty open, but towards the exit of the corner, it tightens up dramatically, and it's not really the straightest way through this corner.
If you're able to get through this corner with one steering input, right? So there's no reason to have to steer the bike more than once for this corner. You steer it back at the beginning, back near your reference point where you turn in, and then you let the bike smoothly arc through the remainder of the corner. If you turn in too early, you're probably going to have to make a second steering input all the way on the exit of the corner, because you're going to run wide, you'll be heading towards the edge of the racetrack, you'll have to lean the bike over further just to keep it on the track. So if you have to steer the bike more than once in the corner, then chances are either your turn point or your apex isn't as good as it could have been.
Alright, so taking a look at our lines one more time. On the green line, you turn it once in the beginning and it's a nice smooth arc all the way through the corner. Red line, you turn it in the beginning to start the corner, and then once you come past the apex and realize that you're running wide, you're going to have to turn it again.
Last, you want to be able to get on the throttle early in the corner, and you want to be able to consistently roll on the throttle throughout the remainder of the corner, right? So once you turn the thing in, you want to go positive with the throttle as soon as you possibly can, and then you want to be able to add throttle very slowly and gradually throughout the remainder of this corner. If there's any point where you have to roll off, then your turn point or your apex probably isn't in the right spot and you need to choose another one.
So taking a look at our lines again, on the green line, you'd be able to get on the gas early and roll on hard on the exit of the corner. On the red line, you could try to get on the gas early, but on the exit of the corner where it tightens up, you're going to need to roll off. If you're going to lean the bike over further to keep it on the track, you don't want to be adding throttle at the same time. So on the red line, you're not going to be able to drive off that corner very well.
So as you approach your apex, you want to look to start to line up your apex mark and your exit marks. So in this corner, we have a couple exit markers that we can use. Way off in the distance there are two cones, and then there's also the corner worker station off in the distance that you can use as well. And there's a white cone out in front of that. But when you start to approach your apex and you see that the apex cone and that corner worker station or your drive to markers are starting to line up, it signifies that it's a good time to start your drive off of the corner. So the whole point of getting a good line in the beginning of the corner is to line that up, right? If you can line up a good drive, a nice straight shot onto a straightaway, that's the best that you're going to do. It's going to allow you to get on the throttle super hard, take lean angle away as you come off of the corner, use the fat part of the tire to really get a good drive coming off of the corner. So everything that we do in the beginning of the corner, choosing a good reference point for where to turn in, choosing a good apex, is going to set up a good exit for the corner. And that's the most important thing, is to be able to really drive the bike off of the exit.
So I thought I'd give you a look at what the turn 3 looks like at speed. So here we are coming through turns 1 and 2. We're going to set up turn 3 right now. And you can see the rider in front turns in a little early, gets to the apex a little early, and runs a little wide.
That's the basics of choosing, right? So the three things that you're going to need that are mandatory: a reference point for where you want to turn in, a reference point for the apex, and a reference point for the exit. If you got those three and you can get things lined up, working smoothly, then you want to stick with it, and you should have a pretty decent line. So that's the basics of choosing a line through a very simple corner. If you like this video, please go ahead and like it on YouTube. If you're interested in hearing more riding techniques like this, subscribe to my channel, Stewman Rides, and we're going to be doing a series of these types of videos to kind of break corners down. Next one we'll do will probably be a little bit different from this one. This is a pretty straightforward and simple corner. Maybe next time we'll get into something that's a little bit more challenging. So thanks a lot for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, throw up a like. If you disagree, or if you want to have a discussion about any of the stuff I mentioned in the video, please feel free to comment, and I'll be happy to address any comments as quickly as I can. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel.